Hi, and welcome to this week's The Mortgage Broker broadcast. My guest this week is Jonathan Needham from Needham Financial, and I wanted to get him back onto the podcast. He was on the podcast quite some time ago. I've known Johnny Needham for quite a period of time. We both worked together at Sequence, and he came back on the pod, came originally on the podcast back in June 2021. So he's not been on for near enough 4 years. And yeah, I think a lot's happened to him in the time. Obviously, the industry's changed so much over that since we last caught up with Jonathan. And I just wanted to get him back onto the podcast, just to have a catch up in terms of what he's been doing and just have a bit more of a discussion around the mortgage industry. Last time we talked about recruiting advisors and about recruiting experience and things like that. But this time I just wanted to get an update on him, but then also just have a chat about the mortgage industry in general. And yeah, let's just get Jonathan onto the podcast. So welcome back onto the podcast, Mr. Jonathan Needham. How are you?
I'm very well, Craig. Thank you for having me back. And as you've just said, 4 years since I was last on.
4 years.
I was trying to work out earlier on this morning how long ago it was. And yeah, time flies when you're having fun.
Certainly does, mate. It certainly does. And like I said, the brief chat we had before we hit record, that was 9th of June 2021 was when the podcast
Is that
went.
when it was?
Yeah, 9th of June. So yeah, just short of 4 years ago. But like you said, it's hard to sort of think about 4 years. What's that? 208 weeks. Is that about right? My calculation is about right. Something like that.
Yeah.
200 weeks of your life has gone since you were last on the podcast. So, which obviously we're going to get into about. I appreciate you coming back on the podcast. I'm looking forward to having a catch up and a chat about from a fellow South Yorkshireman originally. So,
proud of the
won't
fact.
mention football and stuff like that. We're not going to talk about anything to do with football.
No, probably leave that.
Yeah, we will leave that out. So for those people that don't know who you are, do you want to just do a brief introduction?
Yeah, so Jonathan Needham, as you say, been in this industry now coming up, I think, for 3 decades.
Wow.
Believe it or not, I know it's frightening, isn't it? Started as a wet behind the ears 18-year-old for Nationwide Building Society as a cashier. And I was rubbish at doing that because I didn't put the money in the right slots and all that sort of thing, and I could never balance my till at the end of the night, and it used to drive the people there crackers. But then at that time they were just developing this different way of working within the building society, and that was having customer advisors actually in the banking hall, and they gave me that opportunity, and I didn't look back really, and had a cracking 15 years in the end with Nationwide.
Wow.
Doing different roles, was a mortgage advisor, financial consultant, and then for some bizarre reason I moved into sales management, and that's when I started going grey. And then the environment started changing a little bit. Left there, went to work at Connells, running financial services within an estate agency environment. That's where obviously you and I first met. Ended up doing 5 years there, successful years. Then had a spell with LSL, which I think is where I was at when we last spoke.
Yep.
Working at Primis.
Yeah, Primis, yeah, it was.
As an RSD for Primis. And then I think as we started coming out of lockdown, I think a lot of people started reevaluating their own situation and decided to go self-employed at that point, set up a business consultancy. My main sort of contract was with a local network, and the last probably 3.5 years has been spent supporting that network's growth. And then that sort of relationship came to a natural end towards the back end of last year. And now myself and my brother are doing something together in the guise of Needham Financial, with the support of Cornerstone Network. So yeah, that's been the last 30 years.
So the last 3 decades. So what? So if I,
Aye.
so like when you look back and think, I would think when you were sort of talking then and about your nationwide and the couldn't balance the till at the end of the day, notes in the wrong way. Not, I
Yeah,
used to get for notes the wrong way around. So bearing in mind, I worked at the co-op bank years gone by. Started out in retail, and yeah, I can remember I was never on cashier duties, very rarely. And when I was, the cashier, like she was looking at my notes, going, and I was the manager of the branch. So bearing in mind, I was the manager. Sometimes you went onto the tills and you did everything else
yeah,
as well,
covered.
and
Yeah,
you're covered. And I come like the chief cashier, she's sort of going, she'd like inspect my like my notes. Going, well, the £10 not the right way around. It's like, but in
yeah,
terms of they were made for those roles. When you talk about your transition into sales and the way
yeah,
that your career's progressed, you were never born to be a cashier. Never. I learned good discipline with being a cashier. I always wanted to make sure that my till balanced at the end of the night and my notes were in the right way around and all the rest of it. But I was never built for being a cashier, and clearly you wasn't either. So
No, absolutely not. And I look back now and I think I've always been incredibly grateful to my area manager at the time, a chap called Dean Puddifat, who bizarrely is now my father-in-law. But that's
wow,
another story
oh, that's,
altogether. Yeah. And yeah, I suppose Dean saw something in me and realised, because it could have ended then. Because, as I say, it was not great, but yeah, probably right time, right place. I think that's been the case uh, in a few instances, really, as I look back. I mean, I was given the opportunity, but in fairness, it was my own ability and dedication and graft, really, that sort of, I have repaid that investment from people over the years. But I think looking back, what I would say, we had some great times over the 15 years I spent at Nationwide. It was a great environment. The training in particular was first class. The investment that the business made into people's development, and I don't really see that these days anymore.
yeah,
There's a real gap, especially in our industry. And it's very much an aging industry. You've only got to look at mine and your faces to realise that. And you kind of think, well, who's going to blood the next generation of mortgage brokers? Where are they coming from? I don't really see the banks and building societies recruiting. Like I say, I don't really see the training and support that used to be available. And I think there's genuinely an opportunity there.
yeah.
Um, but yeah, we had some good times, some good laughs.
I think I agree, mate. In terms of when you look at it, it's just more like now is obviously more. We need to generate income. We need to justify we've taken these boards, these investors, there's various levels and layers that you have to go through. And I think what I like, and I don't want to jump into the podcast too much in terms of what I wanted to talk to you about and what we are going to talk about. But the thing is with us is that we have come from that environment. So we have seen it done firsthand. We've seen it done in a first class kind of way of training and development. That will never leave us as individuals. So what we're doing now, totally separate from what we obviously we're not working together, but in terms of what, and I want to explore in terms of what you're doing at Needham Financial now. But when you look at what we do and how we work and how we support and help brokers in every part of their journey, whether they're just starting out or the good thing is that we haven't lost that. We've still got bills
No.
to pay, we've still got mortgages to pay, we're still running businesses that balance sheet and a profit and loss
Yeah,
and forecasting. However, fundamentally, we are here to help and support mortgage brokers
Yeah,
be better brokers?
100%. And I think appreciating the fact that we operate in a regulated environment, right? So if you're a broker in the UK, you need to be authorised to trade. And you can do that, generally speaking, in one or two ways. You can either be directly authorised with the FCA, or what most brokers do is they establish a relationship with a mortgage network or mortgage and protection network. And as we both know, there's a number of different networks out there of all different shapes and sizes. I think fundamentally, all a network is a service provider, like your gas or your electric or your mobile phone or whatever. It's there to provide you with a platform to trade,
Yeah.
access to lenders, access to providers, and in addition to that, one would hope that they're going to be able to make sure that the advice you're giving is right, the cases that you're putting together are compliant, so it's there to keep you safe. And I think above that, in my opinion, there doesn't really seem to be many networks out there who really provide anything over and above those sort of fundamental things. Platform to trade, access to lenders, will do your compliance, will reconcile your commission. And I think when you're talking about a broker or a brokerage that know what they're doing, that's probably all they really need. But if you talk about a newer to industry broker, somebody who's just finding the feet, let's say, like I was all those years ago, I don't really see anybody really who provides that added value, who will invest that time in coaching and training and doing it properly. And I think that the reason that there is a lack of that is because you need to have a bravery, in my opinion, because you're not necessarily going to see a return from that individual for a period of time. So as a consequence of that, the amount of time and effort and investment that you make into that individual, you're not going to see a return on immediately. And I think we live far too much in the short term, and there isn't enough focus on the medium to long term. Equally as well, I don't think brokers, generally speaking, are seen as people. They're just seen as numbers in a seat. And, the feedback I get from different places would suggest that although I'm self-employed, running my own firm within a network, I feel like I'm employed again. I feel like I'm employed by this entity who, at the end of the day, just providing me with that platform to trade.
Yeah.
And I'm not necessarily getting that added value. Network turns around and says, "Oh, by the way, we're going to put your fees up," without really justifying the reasons as to why. But yeah, what we're trying to do, I think, in our own way, our own small way, is plugging that gap that exists within the industry, whereby there is an opportunity for, whether it's new to industry, returning to industry, whether it's focusing on brokers who currently trade as registered individuals within AR firms. And sometimes that's, even worse, because those types of brokers have got two people's hands in the wallet or the purse, the network and the AR firm. And they're sat there wondering, what am I getting for this? And I think there's an awful lot of promises made initially. We'll give you leads, we'll provide you with admin support, And actually the reality, when push comes to shove, you don't get any of it. You're just left to your own devices. And I think it's got the potential to be quite dangerous as that, because, you're a broker, you're not entirely sure what you're doing, you really need some support. You might engage with somebody who's going to provide you with leads. You're desperate for leads because the firm that you're working in, although they promised you a load of leads, they've not necessarily delivered on that. So you hook up with an accountant, let's say, and I'm generalising now, and the accountant starts passing you stuff over. You've not done an appropriate level of due diligence. Some of the applications you've submitted, you've unwittingly submitted them, and potentially it's fraud. And you get struck off by a lender's panel. Then there's a domino effect, and it's game over. And it's not necessarily the fault of the broker. It's because they've not been provided with that right sort of induction into the industry, because there's too much of a focus, in my view, on its headcount targets, getting people up and running quickly without necessarily realising or recognising, should I say, the importance of investing in the long term and providing that, proper support, training, coaching. You and I used to spend quite a lot of our time in observations with brokers, certainly back in the Connells days. And I always knew that the broker never particularly appreciated me being sat on their shoulder. But I don't think there's anything wrong in that. What I used to call touchline coaching. You don't necessarily need to sit and observe from are they covering off all the points in the IDD in the right order and what have you, but focusing more on things like body language and word pattern, how they say things, how the customer is reacting to what the broker is saying, and that old-fashioned sales skills essentially. And I think there's a massive gap, in the industry currently. I was over in Stockport on Friday with a firm, recruitment firm, Integro. Sat with Johnny and Will over there, and we were saying exactly the same. And if somebody comes along and does this seriously, and certainly Needham Financial with the support cornerstone, this is something that we're trying to champion. I do believe it could completely change the game for brokers.
Definitely. And to be honest with you, I 100% agree with you, because I talked about on my podcast so many times before about the over-promising, under-delivering, the whole sort of selling you the role, not seeing it as a long-term thing. Because you've got to get into your head, whether you're a broker, a business owner, small firm, sole trader, large firm, it doesn't really matter. You're doing this for the long term. Everything that you're doing, you're not doing it for the short term. You're not going to take CMAP and go through CMAP 1, 2, and 3. Then start to learn about the industry. Then start to worry about getting cast. Like I said, getting the role plays done or the observations done, and having the annual stuff and all the stuff that comes with being a broker. You are not going to do that to go, do you know what? I'm in this for 2 years. I'm going to earn loads of cash and then I'm out of here. You ain't going to do it, because you're not going to get your return on investment. Your return on investment is long term. So when and I think that is, there'll be a lot of brokers listening to this, because you speak to them, I speak to them, that have been sold the role. They are and are right. Don't get me wrong. There are some amazing firms out there that offer a lot of help and support, built on solid foundations, have got RIs and done it from the ground up and done it in a really good way. There are a lot, though, in contrast to that just, even though they are, because they've been treated as a number by their firm when they were an RI, they then decided to go and set their own firm up. So they think, actually, that's acceptable. That's how how I was treated. I'm going to treat my team, my firm, the people in my firm, I'm going to treat them the same way. So over-promising, under-delivering, micromanaging, long contracts in terms of 12 months notice, and you've got no pipeline paid out on, and all the things that I'm seeing now where sort of people are getting tied into it because they're naive and they don't know. They think that's
Yeah.
when they come into the industry, they don't know any better because they think, well, that's just pretty standard. Whereas, like you say, there are so many brokers out there to forget the scary and risk stuff with regards to clients placing cases, complaints, and all, and do it and not doing the right thing. Forget that. But I know there's so many brokers that are part of firms or even gone. I know these firms that are individuals that have gone to networks paying a lot of monthly fee out, never sold a mortgage before in their life, not getting any help and support, but the small network is taking the £500, £600 a month, saying thanks very much for that. That's our
Yeah.
business model. We'll recruit loads of
Yeah.
brokers,
Yeah.
paying that amount of money. If you leave, then well, we're going to charge you 6 months fee for leaving. So we're going to get at least 3.5 grand out of you. Thanks very much. Crack on, kind of thing. And
Yeah.
if you win, you win. If you sink, you
Yeah.
sink.
That that's driven. I think that's driven a lot by people's general motivation for creating an entity, shall we say. So, if people's motivation is to just make a few bob, then they don't care about the individual, do they?
No,
If your
no,
general motivation and mine, and I know yours is as well, is to genuinely help people, then as a consequence of that, you're going to have more people interested in having a conversation with you about what it is you're doing. But I take an awful lot of satisfaction and pride in working with brokers, seeing them grow. And, I could go through a list as long as my arm of people who have started with me as brand new to industry. And I've supported them, I've helped them grow, got them in a position where they've got their own firm, I've helped them grow that firm, and now they're, very, very successful leaders of their own business, multi-broker operations, doing incredibly well. And that gives me a real sense of pride and satisfaction. My main motivation for doing what I do is to try and help brokers grow. And as a consequence of that, I can then create an element of personal income for myself. But that's not the leading reason why
no,
I want to do it.
no,
It's a bit like going back to when I were on the tools. The main reason I would be very passionate about recommending protection was I was motivated to try and protect as many people as I possibly could. And as a consequence of doing that, there is then naturally a payment of commission for doing that. But my main motivation was I just wanted to protect people. Similarly, now, my main motivation is to provide brokers with a platform where they are safe, because as we were saying, I think longevity is really, really important, as is recognizing that we're in a regulated environment. But they're also in a place where they are treated as people. And if they need support with growth, or if they need support with developing multiple income streams, or getting better at understanding how to have the protection conversation with a client, we'll do that. It's not just about stacking numbers up
no,
and having bums on seats and trying to be the fastest growing or the biggest. It's not about that, because that really don't mean anything, does it? To
no,
the brokers,
no,
in my opinion, anyway.
no, exactly.
Um, so and yeah, there's a lot of brokers out there who are perhaps in what you might refer to as a loveless marriage, a loveless relationship, but they can't get out. They're trapped, or they feel trapped. The
Yeah,
perception is that they're trapped because the host, whether it be an AR or a network or whatever it might be, but the current host is putting things in place that make it difficult to leave. And I think fundamentally that's wrong, because saying, as I said, about a service provider, if you want to move where you buy your gas from, that's quite easy, isn't it?
Yeah.
You're not happy with your current supplier, you just switch to somebody else. Similarly, your mobile phone network should be exactly the same.
Mhm.
And I think if it was easier, then the quality of support and the value that brokers would get would look completely different
Yeah.
than it currently does.
I get from a business point of view with regards to protection. When we talk about protection, the thing of clawbacks, and you can have got somebody that can then leave, and you've got the liability for their clawback for the last 4 years of the protection sales. There is a business protection side of things with regards to clawbacks, contracts, people leaving, people switching networks. However, there are ways and means of sort of doing things like novation. So novate the whole pipeline of protection and
Yeah,
move that across. I've been through novation myself. I've worked with a broker that come on board with my firm, and we've novated their protection. That wasn't a seamless process. That
no,
was a hard process, but that should be easier. That should be easier to
yeah,
then go, right, these are all the sales under this agency code. And the level above now sits there rather than sitting there. They're responsible for the clawback, responsible for the
yeah,
advice, and how that works is a little bit different, but it should be easier. So I think it will get easier. It has to get easier. And I think networks have to appreciate and understand that there is going to be changes over the next 10 years. There's going to be changes within our industry as AI becomes more prolific and
yeah,
smoothing out of processes and things like that. The networks have got to look to change and adapt with this
no,
situation and adapt with the industry as a whole. They should be the forefront of this in terms of, because they are the people who, they've got the most pieces of the pie, haven't they? The networks have got,
mm, mm,
if like say, Advisor Prime has got, Openwork have got over
mm,
3,000. They are big pieces
mm,
of the pie
mm.
within this industry. But
I think
it's,
you're right, it shouldn't. I think part of the issue is technology and legacy systems. So when you speak to providers, moving a liability from one environment to another should be a lot more straightforward than it is. The reality is that the providers have a difficulty in legacy systems they've got, but I have to say, in my experience, this is where relationships play the part. And we've got some cracking relationships with the providers, and we can put them on notice to say, this broker's moving from here to here. We really want the novation process to be as simple and as smooth as possible. Can you give us a hand? I'd really appreciate that. And if you've got a really good relationship with somebody, it's human nature in it, they're more likely to do you a favour than. And you'd like to think that as technology improves, processes such as novation should get easier. I think part of the challenge really is there have been recent examples where broker wants to move from one environment to another. Naturally, the network or environment that the broker is moving from needs to provide a reference. It's a regulated reference, so they've got 30 working days to provide it. And the network turns around and says, well, we're going to purposefully be difficult and provide it on day 29. And you think, why?
yeah,
Just because I'm going to be difficult and I don't want you to leave, and I'm going to make it as hard as I possibly can to try and get you to change your mind. That fundamentally is wrong, isn't it?
yeah, exactly.
But
Absolutely.
as we both know, mate, that kind of thing does happen.
Yeah.
You talk about motivate, that's quite a perverse motivation. And as a consequence, there are brokers who are sat, like I say, in loveless marriages. We don't want to be here, but we can't get out, or we're scared. We don't want to rub the flag up the pole because we might have his legs chopped off at the knees, and that's going to knacker his cash flow. And I've got bills to pay, and this, that, and the other. And so people just go, oh, I'll not say anything. I'll not rock the boat. I'll just keep my head down and stay where I am.
Yeah.
Um,
And
but
that is
yeah,
the thing, like I said, the more positive way of providing the help, providing support, under promising and over delivering, and doing all the things that you say you were going to do from the start, and treating people how you want to be treated yourself. That's a massive, rather than sort of saying, right, I'm going to take your legs off and I'm going to hold you like I'm not going to do the reference till day 29. It's like, what's the point? And
Yeah,
if the shoe was the foot, they would have been that way. Say if they are, and that's an RI that's looking to leave, and part of the network was treating them that way. Maybe they are, and that's the problem. Maybe they are, and the network is. Maybe they're not, but that's just how they're treating it. It's just not right. They'll be complaining about how the network's treat on some keyboard, on some Facebook group somewhere, saying anonymously, "This is atrocious. I'm trying to leave the network," and blah 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 blah. But then they're treating their individuals like that as well. Well, break the chain, break the cycle, do something about it.
yeah. Exactly, and I think that's where we come from. In as much as I do tune in massively to this sort of principle of abundance. There's enough for everybody, and I think that's one of the reasons why you and I have got such a good relationship. You might think, well, we're in direct competition with each other. I don't think we are. And again, it's relationships. I went at an event yesterday chatting to the CEO of another network, and we were saying exactly the same thing. Wouldn't it be better for the greater good of this industry if there was an increased amount of collaboration? We could work more closely together. We're not necessarily at war with each other. I don't know how many brokers are in the industry, but there's a lot, isn't there?
Yeah.
And naturally, we work with that network there. The propositions are slightly different, but we can all coexist.
Do you think it goes back to like something that we talked about before we hit record? We had a bit of a conversation before. Do you not think it just goes back to the security of the individual's mindset to think, actually, like you say, you and I, like I've got a firm, I'm recruiting, you doing what obviously you've got a firm, you're recruiting. Are we in direct competition? That would never enter my head because I'm comfortable in my space in terms of what I do. This is who we are as a firm. This is what we offer. I've got another proposition if that doesn't quite fit. So these are the three business models that I work to. If none of those three business models work, then fine. Have a chat with Jonathan Needham. He might have one that has, or chat with this other person who might have. I'm not sort of thinking, right, yeah, I'm going to overpromise and tell them all the things that we don't do. And then when they then join, you're then having to unravel it all, creating the drama, creating the chaos, creating all those things and the resentfulness as well. It's like, what's the point? Like, but it's about the security of the individual that is the CEO or running that firm, who is the name of that particular business, and they comfortable and they're secure in terms of those people as human beings. Well, if they are, that's a good place to be because actually they will tell you about, and that they have got the abundance mindset is a massive thing, mate.
Yeah, I think so. And again, I think it comes down to motivation and why we do what we do. And, something else that I believe strongly about is this whole concept of servant leadership. I exist for the broker's benefit. I am here to serve you. We are just a service provider. What do you need? How can I help you? How do you want our relationship to be structured? How much do you want me to be involved in your life day to day? Some firms just want leaving alone. Some people want you to be involved almost on a day to day basis. But I think you're right. Going back to what you were saying about a certain environment might not be right for one person. A few really good friends of mine are in the process of taking their own firms directly authorised. And there's been a few instances recently where I've said to some individuals, I think you might be worthwhile having a conversation with this person because what they're looking at building could be right up your street. I've always been a big believer that you put a round peg in a round hole and a square peg in a square hole. And I know that's something really simple to say, but it doesn't have to be complicated. It really, really doesn't. And I just think the industry's at a point where it feels... I think if I was a new to industry broker now, I'd feel very overwhelmed by who do I speak to, where do I go, what do I do. I was chatting with a guy called Michael O'Brien.
Yeah.
And Mike's looking at trying to develop a relationship with one of these training firms that puts people through the CMAP, and then you've got your CMAP, you've got your badge that says I've got CMAP. Then where do you go?
Yeah.
Because that's when the real fun starts. And I think what Mike's looking at developing is some kind of academy kind of concept. And I remember speaking to him about that, and it really switched a light on for me because almost creating some kind of legacy to the industry. How good would it be that there's almost a physical academy that
Yeah.
exists for people to go? And naturally, it's not for free. We're not necessarily a charity, but what we're not going to say to people is, all right, you pay us £1,500 and then we're going to completely forget about you
Yeah.
and let you make some silly mistakes and then you'll not be able to work in the industry again. But really fully justify what that frameworks look like,
Yeah.
from getting your CMAP to submitting your first case to progressing through to competent advisor status to, so on and so forth. And I just think there's a definite gap. And I think the more people like you and I, Michael O'Brien, the lads at Cornerstone, New Leaf, the network I was speaking to yesterday, the more people like us who are talking about this positive impact that we can have, the better, in my opinion. And it doesn't just stop with the new to industry. It might be an established broker, let's say, who is very proficient at writing mortgages, and isn't quite sure how to start bringing the protection conversation into the fact find, and really need some support with that. Or they might not necessarily have capacity to have the conversation. So what might be right for that particular firm or individual is to bring somebody in alongside them who will just deal with the protection. They deal with the mortgages, that person deals with the protection. Or there's a referral process where they pass the opportunity on to somebody else. Or it might be the broker who's looking at developing multiple income streams and focusing on commercial finance or wealth or wills and estate planning. Where do we go with that? Where do we start looking for that? And that's about investing in that individual, in that firm, and providing them with that track to run on, not just in that first 2 years,
Oh,
but
no.
for the next 15, 20, 25 years. Sitting down and speaking to a firm principal and really understanding why they're doing what they're doing. What's
Yeah.
your exit? I speak to people day one, ask them, well, what's your exit? People think or say to me, why are you asking me that? We haven't even started a relationship yet. But it's really important that we understand that, so then we can structure whatever it is you want to build accordingly. How many brokers just walk past the opportunity of providing the clients with general insurance? Just walk straight past it because they think the initial margin on the sale isn't worth it.
Yeah.
And yet 70% of GI automatically renews. So if at some future point you want to build something to sell it, well, having a GI book would be a really, really good idea.
Yeah.
And it also build a trail. Similarly, the obsession that we seem to have where we have to take all our protection commission up front. Why? Well, cash flow. Well, okay, get that. But what about mixing it up? Take 50% up front, take 50% of it on the drip.
Yeah.
Maybe your bigger premiums you'd take on a non-indemnity basis.
Yeah.
Then you're building up value in your business. Like I say, I think Needham Financial, Cornerstone, some of the other people that we surround ourselves with, these are the types of conversations that we have with people because we genuinely want to help them. It's not a transactional relationship.
No, it's not a what's in it for me kind of conversation. It genuinely isn't. And because, like you say, there's people you have conversations with that won't fit with you, vice versa. But it's about that. It goes
Yeah.
back The long term, does it? Like, thing is, you've got whatever you're doing within this industry, it's a long term thing. So, like you say, things like I chat with brokers about, well, just take on non-indemnity. I don't even know what that is. What are you talking about, kind of thing. And these are brokers with other networks. You're thinking, how can you not know what this is? And yes, like you say, you've got cash flow forecasts, and it's about income and things like that, especially when you're starting out. But it's just having that open eyes of quickly. It's about getting your head up and having a clear picture and clarity for the long term, but as quickly as you can get your head up. So not having the 2 years of clouded and mistakes and making errors and things like that. It's a case of, right, well, I've been on I've done my seaman now. I know what my options are in terms of business model. I know clearly what those are. Right, I'm going to go down that route because that fits with me best. How quickly can I get my head up and start running and running the race that I want to run, rather than having my head bogged down for the next 2 years because I'm actually running this person's race here because I'm an AR of that network, RI, or even directly authorized, whatever the case may be. It is a case of having clarity what you want, where you're going, and getting your head up, and but giving you that from the start. But we don't like
Yeah.
that, though, do we, Johnny? Like, it's a case of we create a lot of smokes and mirrors. As an industry, we create a lot of jargon, a lot of bull, a lot of, oh, it's
Yeah.
impossible to get cars. It's like, what is cars? There's a lot to
Yeah.
strip back. But I think
Yeah.
that you're absolutely right. Should be that one place to give that clarity to individuals to go and help them make an informed decision for themselves to then know, actually, if I go that route, that's what the next 5, 10 years is going to look like. And then think, actually, because all you want to do as a broker is make the right decision, where your home is, what firm, what that looks like, as soon as you possibly can. Well, if you're coming off a CMAP, these massive decisions, there's
Yeah.
so much clouds in terms of
Well, I
mirrors.
don't think, with respect to the individual broker, they probably don't know what questions they need to ask.
No, they don't. And to be fair, mate, I had a discovery call with a guy last night, and I said that exactly thing. You don't know what you don't know, and he's like, exactly.
Mm.
And he's just got his CMAP one in hand. That's it. He's gone to a network and so he's got full CMAP now. He's gone to the network. They're charging him £600 a month, and he said, "But I'm getting nothing. Like, I don't know what I don't know. I don't.
Yeah.
And what
Yeah.
kind of thing." Which is good for me because obviously then I get a client that I'm going to work with. But it shouldn't be that way. It should be a case of, it shouldn't be like that from the start. But like I say, people don't know what they don't know.
Yeah, and again, it goes back to that short-term attitude of there's an opportunity for us to recruit a broker here. Let's tell them what they want to hear to get them through the door. And then, yeah, they're just left to it. And it's not right, really, because if you make the wrong decision initially and you need to reverse out of the environment that you've ended up in, it's not easy.
No.
It's stressful. It's distracting. It's going to have an impact on what you're doing regarding your day to day with your clients. It's going to impact your cash flow. It's not something that happens overnight. We're saying innovation process and all these other weird and wonderful things. I've always thought financial services has like got its own language, hasn't it? There
Yeah,
should be a phrase book. You know, it's like translation, quick guide to financial services, abbreviations, nonsense word, novation. Why don't we just call it transferring your liability? But anyway, that's another point.
I know.
Um,
it is, mate. Absolutely. But I think we just love that, don't we?
yeah. Well,
So,
I think some people play on it, don't they, a little
yeah, they
bit?
do.
That it make
Definitely.
things sound really complicated because I know I'm going to talk in abbreviations, so I have no idea what I'm talking about whatsoever. And again, it's happening less and less, I think. But you know, it's a very, I think, old-fashioned approach that financial services has taken, and I genuinely believe there's an opportunity for it to be defrosted. And you know, we lift the curtain
Yeah.
and let people actually see that it's not complicated. It's quite straightforward, actually, when you strip it back. And as I said right at the start, you need a platform to trade on. You need people to speak to. You need customers, clients. So you need a lead source. I think we've been blessed with social media. 2025 brokers these days have got the ability to organically grow lead sources. You can buy leads from different people, as we know, or you go down the more traditional, established route of having a relationship with estate agents or people like that. But you need people to speak to, and then it just builds from there. It's not complicated, it really isn't. But to begin with, you need the right sort of support around you. You need people, in my opinion, who are going to tell you the right thing initially. So you don't make a mistake. You don't end up in, like I say, a loveless marriage. Divorces are never easy, are they, mate? Really,
no, definitely not.
It can be quite costly and stressful. But sometimes, we don't always get it right first time.
No.
And as a consequence of that, I think, the industry needs to really think about how easy it makes it for brokers to have this sort of freedom of movement. And, if not necessarily happy in one place, I can just switch. And as I say, if it was easier, I'm absolutely convinced the quality of support and the level of service and the added value that brokers would be getting would look completely different to what it looks like. And I am generalising, I must admit. Like I said, there's some fantastic places out there. But I have to say, the vast majority of people I speak to, are telling me that, where they are, they're not necessarily getting what they were promised.
No, I agree with you 100%. Like I said, there are some amazing firms out there, amazing networks doing what they say they're going to do and backing that up. So I think, like I say, it's a challenge to change. Try and get it right the first time as best you can. And but yeah, the whole process should be a lot easier. So definitely,
Yeah.
Johnny, we've been talking for nearly 40 or nearly 50 minutes. So we've still filled the podcast in terms of that time.
Yeah,
So
good.
thank you so much for agreeing to come back on. I know you're busy with
No,
everything
that's
that's
all
going
right.
on.
I really appreciate the invite, mate. And if listening to me and you witter on, if it helps at least one person, then it's been time well spent, I think.
Exactly. Yeah, definitely. And it won't be 4 years next time before we're back on, because I think in terms of what we're talking about, I think things will develop. So we've got to get you back onto the podcast sooner than the
Yeah,
4 years, mate.
just let me know.
Fine. All right. I will, catch you
Okay.
soon. Thanks very much for coming back on.
Yeah. See you, mate. Cheers, buddy. Thanks. Bye. Bye.
Thanks for that, Jonathan. Thanks for agreeing to come back on the podcast. It was really good to catch up and get your take on the mortgage industry, and it was good to have a chat around that. So, yeah, thanks very much for your time, and hopefully we won't leave it 4 years next time for you to get back on the podcast. And if you are thinking about becoming a self-employed mortgage broker, or you're looking to set up your own brand and business, or you're just looking to accelerate the growth of your existing business, get in touch, see my website, craigskelton.co.uk, book a discovery call, send me a WhatsApp. Let's just have a chat about how I can help and support you achieve your goals in 2025. And as always, please don't forget to run your own race.